can gauge most of the records I've done in the last 16 years by what child was born. The emo record was my first daughter, and that's 16 years old. Then my second sort of under my own name solo record was Goodnight Unknown, and that was the year that my son was born, and he's 11. And then Brace the Wave was the year before my youngest daughter was born, and then I put out an EP called Apocalypse Fetish that she's on the cover of when she was. I did the sessions just after she showed up.
I assume that's a coincidence, right? The timing on all of this?
It is actually kind of a coincidence. I mean, and she just turned 5. So I would say that it's been 5 years since I put out a solo record. Also, but that was an EP.
How do you sort of split up your time when it comes to all these different projects? I mean, in the case of Dinosaur Sebadoh, I assume that there's more external forces at play.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like Dinosaur Jr. Yeah, it's like I know that I always know it's coming. You know, we go through cycles. You know, we'll do a Dinosaur Jr. record, and then Jay Mascis will do a solo record, and then we'll tour until we can't. I mean, we'll basically run a cycle all the way through. We'll do a couple of U.S. tour, anyways. So I always know it's coming. Yeah, and I just try to fill in the periods in between Dinosaur. That's kind of my biggest commitment. So I just try to fill in the time in between that, and I try to plan that out a little bit in advance. You know, I guess I don't feel like I have a lot of trouble doing that. But
I mean, is Sebadoh still a going concern in the same sort of way the Dinosaur is?
No, I mean, just because Sebadoh, that record came out, and the last one we did, I mean, that was what, 2018 or 2019. Maybe 2000. Oh, I can't remember. I think it was 2019. But yeah, I mean, but that actually, we would have done a lot more touring had the pandemic not happened, because we were on tour when we were actually in Australia and Asia when that all hit, and that effectively cut off all that touring. And now, I mean, I gotta go with Dinosaur Jr. now.
Just in terms of like that's what's coming up, or in terms of like that's just a thing that people will come out for and buy records for.
Well, it's just it's my commitment. I mean, I'm as invested in that as I am in Dinosaur and Sebadoh. So
there is sort of an assumption, though, after the last Sebadoh record, that there will continue to at least sort of be a cycle there.
Yeah, I can't really say. I don't know. I guess right now I can't even think about it. I sort of feel. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we were cut off that way, but I don't know if I really want to face a year where I'm touring for a month with, I got caught into this cycle last time through where it was like, I was ending a Dinosaur Jr. tour and starting a Sebadoh tour two days later. And I'm like, I don't know if I can. And especially after being home now for a whole year. And I'm like, God, I like being home, I like my life. I like my life at home. So I don't know if I want to be touring for more than half of a year.
There's a lot of practical concerns, the biggest one having a family, but I assume like at a certain point in your life, it's just sort of difficult on the body to to do like 2 full tours back to back.
Well, I mean, I've learned how to live on the road pretty well, like I don't really, like I stopped like drinking regularly and all that other kind of stuff. I've listened to my body. My body had a lot to say about it, and I listened. So I've kind of learned that over the last well over 10 years, the balance that I need to keep to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I really like being home. And my kids, they age, and then they're old. I'll have plenty of time to be bouncing around the world when my wife can come with me, and the kids are all grown up or whatever.
When you put out an album like this one, is there an expectation though that you're going to still have to do kind of a bare minimum of touring on it?
I guess so. But I mean, for a solo record, I don't know, I don't know. I mean, I did a bunch of solo touring, where I just went around and did this kind of house tour, super informal. I played to like 20 or 30 people a night. I played at 7:00 at night. It was pretty easy.
That's middle-aged rock and roll touring.
Yeah, it's pretty great, because it's like it just, it's so much better than playing to 20 people in a backyard is like 100 times better than playing to 20 people in a bar at 11 o'clock at night. It's so much, it's like so much easier on the ego. But yeah, but I don't know. I didn't really discuss it with the label. They seem like, I don't think they're, you know, I don't know. I try to do everything super low impact for the people that put out my record, so no one's losing a lot of money, and you know, so I don't know. I don't want to be sort of forced into. I don't want to. It's just so modest that like if I don't tour, it's not gonna be a devastating thing for them.
Pragmatically, I know Dinosaur already announced a tour, I think, for September. So, like, in
Yeah.
terms of actually things starting to open up again and people feeling comfortable being out in the world, that doesn't leave you really any sort of window between now and then to put on a multiple city tour, I would imagine.
No. I might look into some backyard shows this summer around this area. That might be kind of cool. Where do you live now? Are you living still in the
I'm
New York?
still in New York.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you say you're still in the New York area.
I considered getting out, but I don't know where. I'm in Queens, which is like obviously this
Yeah.
time last year was kind of was the epicenter of the world.
Oh, yeah.
So roughly this time last year, so like March April timeframe. Did you have to cancel? Did you pull the plug on the Sebadoh tour?
Oh, yeah. Couple of couple of Sebadoh tours, and like, but there was one that was supposed to start. It was so crazy. Like we came back from Australia literally on the run from it. Like where they're just like we got into the we're coming into the States and they're like, have you been in Asia in the last 2 weeks? And it was like, we were actually in Asia like 2 weeks in a day before that. So it's like, we're like, no, as a matter of fact, haven't been in Asia in 2 weeks. But we got in, and then our next tour was in Europe, and there was like a ton of Italian dates, and it was just whenever all that, like, because remember that was like the kind of big.
Yeah, Italy was the wave, I guess, right before us.
I think I was due to leave like in 5 days or something, and I was the first guy in the band to float the idea. I was like, hey guys, let's not get stuck in Europe. I got an idea. Let's not get stuck in Europe. And then my bandmates are kind of like, I don't know, we need the money. We got to go on tour. And I'm like, we're going to lose a lot of money if we leave on this tour. And then luckily the booking agency stepped in. But it was like we were 5 days. I was 5 days away from fucking going to Logan Airport in Boston, flying to fucking Stuttgart or whatever. It was,
I guess like early March, I was putting on an event in Berkeley. It felt pretty touch and go at the time. In hindsight now, it seems really clear. Like it seems clear that it would have been completely crazy for you to have stayed on and done the tour. But
yeah,
I think it's sort of easy to lose touch with the fact that it wasn't really. I mean, it was clear that it was bad, and it was clear that it was getting worse. But I don't think that we had any idea of the magnitude of the whole thing at the time.
yeah, I don't know, man. We were like when we were in Australia with Sebadoh, like our drummer Bob was just like, "It's the pandemic. This is it. This is the big one." And I'm like, ah. But we were like, I mean, also we were in airports every day in Australia, and with like Chinese tourists. I mean, which wasn't in itself like that. That's not. I mean, it's not. It's relevant only in that they were all masked.
It originated there, and it was moving across the world in a very
And
clear
in
pattern.
Australia, they were like, this is no fucking joke. I mean, there was like we were at the airport and there's fucking guys in hazmat suits running around, and I'm like, when I was in Japan, I bought like my first bottle of hand sanitizer. I'm like, maybe I should buy this. And then it was just like every day we were in an airport for every day, and then I got home and I was like sick, so I don't even know if I had it. I mean, I could have. It's like I had, whatever. I had some fucking weird ass chest pains for like a week and a half. I felt dead tired. I had fevers every night for a couple of. I mean, I didn't know. I was like, this is the worst jet lag ever. I mean,
So you may have been the one to bring COVID to California.
well, I went back to Massachusetts, but yeah, I
Oh,
don't
good. So
know.
you
I
brought it to the
couldn't
East
have.
Coast.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty. Yeah, my wife and I sure didn't feel very well for a week or two, but if we had it, it was pretty fucking mild. So
Were you in Boston for a chunk of this?
No, I've been in Massachusetts for the whole thing. So
Oh, for the whole thing? Okay.
yeah, like in out, but Western Massachusetts. Like
What I mean, I know you're usually based in LA. Is it just
I'm
a
not. I'm actually no. I moved from LA like 5 years ago, but I was in LA for 17 years.
what brought you out to Massachusetts? I mean, obviously you're from there, but what
I'm
brought you
from there.
back?
I had I went through a divorce. My first marriage dissolved, and in the wake of that, I couldn't support two households in Los Angeles, or I felt I couldn't. I felt that I couldn't support two households in Los Angeles, and I thought it would be easier for me to move everybody, like my ex-wife and my current wife and my kids and everybody back east where we had family and stuff.
I'm from California. I'm from San Francisco originally and live out here now. And over the
Right.
course of like the past, 10, 15 years, I've had a lot of friends go back to LA.
Yeah.
And every time I visit them, they all seem just so healthy. It's like, and I don't know how much of it is just like, is New York City, that's part of it. I just feel like we're all just already walking around just angry and pale and mad all the time. But then I go back and visit them and they're like, they've all lost 50 pounds and are super tan.
I loved I I really liked LA and I'd like to go back there. I mean, I like California, California's it's pretty awesome. I Yeah, I mean, I moved back. I just had like I freaked out. I was like, I can't, you know, I'm gonna go broke, and I'm gonna, and I can't do this, but I think in the end, it's funny. It's almost just like the COVID thing when you're through it and you're like, well, I could have, like with the onset of something, it seems so impossibly large and catastrophic, and that's what it felt like, when I had divorced when I was in the midst of this extremely prolonged and painful divorce, and having money issues and stuff, and just like this is insurmountable, and feeling that what I had to do was this sort of make this drastic move back. And but it's kind of funny, like looking back on it, it's almost like just it's almost the same thing of like, God, remember when I used to wear rubber gloves to fill up the to fill up the gas? Remember that feeling of going to the fucking supermarket for that first couple of weeks? When you wait, I just just that sense of dread, and I had that, and it scared me away. And it scared me away from California. In some ways, I wish I had just sort of hung in there.
I mean, obviously, you were established as a musician by the time you moved out there. I know a lot of people, move to New York or Los Angeles when they're starting out in their career. At that point, and at this point in your career, do you feel like where you're located has any impact on your ability to make music?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it would be kind of cool to go back to LA now, because I feel like I could probably use it a little more, because I just had more. I'd actually made more friends there, and I'd been there for 17 years, and then when I came back here, it's just like, oh man, I'm back east, and I don't have friends, and I mean, I have guys that, I got my band and stuff, but it's, I don't know, I don't have friends and stuff, so it would be kind of cool to be back in LA, just because I feel like the one really good thing about coming back here was that it really did focus me creatively in a way. I don't know exactly why, but it did. It really focused me creatively, and it'd be kind of cool to take that kind of creative focus and go back to LA with that.
Obviously, this is something that a lot of people have been thinking about over the past year, but I wonder how much of it has to do with distraction. You already have to devote a certain portion of your life and your energy to having a family, and then in a place like LA, you've got all these other things going on. It sounds like perhaps one of the upsides of not really having a social life in as meaningful a way means that you've got time to actually just put your head down and work on stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And then maybe in some ways too, maybe just the winter, the feeling of just this. Maybe these things are they are actually a real part of me, because that's how my initial creative bursts were all in this climate, and in old houses, like I'm in an old house again with a spooky attic, and just LA is it's a sensual place, really. It was just such a beautiful and sensual place. And you kind of like, yeah, it's funny just taking that away, where it's just like you kind of take away all of that sensuality. It's like, the people that when you meet people, like when I see friends and stuff, nobody, I mean, like in LA, it's like people just hugged, it was just like you went, oh, hey, buddy, you're hugging each other, and everybody at the supermarket still fucking friendly and all this stuff. And then you just come back east, and it's like, everybody's just, it's just back to that kind of like, it's just funny. I mean, it's the social distancing that just exists here anyway.
The Puritans kind of pioneered social distancing in a way, I
They
guess.
did. I mean, it's so funny just coming back to this, and even just in the onset of the pandemic, it's like, is this really that different? It's like, especially up here in Massachusetts, it's like, man, it's like it's so. It's like it's almost a relief for people. Like, wow, now I really don't have to. I really don't have to deal with you.
It sounds like you took to that lifestyle pretty quickly. It really varies from person to person. Like I know a lot of people who go out to a place like California where people are like generally more just open or friendly and kind of have an aversion to it. But it sounds like you took to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did. I don't know. I mean, I'm not entirely. I'm not from. I mean, I'm from the Midwest, kind of originally. So
That's got its own stigmas.
yeah, when I moved from the Midwest to Massachusetts, it was shocking when I was a kid. So I mean, in the Midwest, you're like, I'm from Michigan. Woo, Michigan's great. You go to Massachusetts, people are like, who gives a shit where you're from? Why do you give a shit that you're from Michigan? I mean, like, it's like, there's all sort of like these ideas of like regional pride and all that seem so they're so it's not cool. so so I'd already so I don't know, when I went to LA, I was like, oh, it's cool. It kind of felt more like the South and more. So I kind of I did take to it. I did like that aspect to it. And
Beyond the like productivity, do you feel like where you're based has a meaningful impact on the music itself? I mean, when you're in a hypothetically happier place, do you tend to make happier music?
I don't know now. I don't know, because in some ways, like LA was a huge blow to my creativity. I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether that was just a consequence of like my marriage. And I mean, I moved. I mean, my move to LA was very traumatic and full of, fucking VH1 behind the scenes drama kind of shit. And it took me a long time to kind of come out of a lot of uh, issues, like drug addiction issues and things like that. And I think that, and sort of the final step of that was actually leaving my first marriage. And then when I left the first marriage, then it was like I couldn't actually live in California because it just felt like I wasn't able to manage it on a financial level. I guess that's like now. I mean, so much of what's going on in my life now has to do with my second marriage and that really opening up, and then me addressing a lot of personal issues that I think have opened me up and made me more creative. So, or at least where I've regained my creativity. I wouldn't where I just feel like I'm back in a zone. So I'd like to go back to LA to see.
To see if it's actually internal or external.
I'd like to see if I can maintain this sort of creativity in Los Angeles.
I know a lot of people, if they go through something profound like a breakup or divorce, they want to change other parts of their life, whether it's like moving or like something as silly as like, I guess like changing your hair or growing your beard, but like you just want to like
I did. I grew up there.
you almost want to like make this clean start. And I'm wondering like if that for you that first marriage was just sort of so tied up in all of those other things that you were grappling with at the time that it just ultimately became just untenable for you.
It did. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, especially in the last year, just because I haven't, I've just been sort of stuck with myself and thinking and grappling with all of my own nervous things. And it's funny you would say Bell's when you say Bell's palsy, because it's like I think that I had that mildly, like sort of
It's possible, yeah.
in my when I was sort of transitioning between like being a teenager. I mean, I think I was like 18 or something when it happened. But I do really internalize a lot of tensions, and they do affect me physically. And anyway, just having to go through all of these things, finally being sort of forced face to face, because usually I can be, what happens in my life is that, I can come to these critical moments. And this is why my first marriage went on for as long as it did, is I would get to these critical moments and then I'd be like, I got to go on tour.
You literally escape.
I would be literally extracted from the situation. And then, so all of like the momentum of these self-realizations that might be building up and the problems that might be building up, the momentum would be broken regularly. And, but it did become untenable because it by that point you're talking 20 years of my life, my entire adult life was sort of wrapped up in a first marriage that was like, that had some real problems and things that I didn't know how to address. So, but now it's just funny now, like I did separate myself. I had this funny, this whole fucking quarantine and being stuck at home, and it's like going like, oh wait a minute, it's not just my first marriage. Actually, it's a lot of personality things that I haven't really seen and dealt with.
The personality stuff is, I mean, and I think it's something that you'll ultimately probably benefit from, that we've all probably benefited from quarantine, and like you said, like for better for worse, being alone with your thoughts. But it must be so hard to untangle potential personality issues from both a marriage and drug use, right? Because those are just two like such incredibly important parts of your identity.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really, yeah, I don't know. It's been kind of, yeah. I mean, like it's funny because like even as hellish, I mean, I've had some really low moments, really, really low, paranoid, fearful moments during the last year. But I think the funny thing is, it's like when I come out of all of this, I'm just gonna be like, that was actually pretty good.
That's its own personality flaw, though, right?
My wife already busted me on that too, like because I just said something like, yeah, it's actually not that bad. And she just looks at me, and goes like, Jesus Christ. I mean, we had, I mean, I hit some real lows,
Over the past year.
yeah, real lows, but but yeah, but it's all like introspection shit, which is, it's all stuff where it's like, it's like, you got to figure your way out of this one. And it's not drinking and it's not, there's no escape from this one. You're not going on tour next week, bud. you like, you can't even leave your
You
fucking.
could like go for a walk around the block, but that's about the extent of it,
Go
right?
for a walk around the block, buddy. But you better make damn sure you're not hungover tomorrow, because if you're hungover, you're gonna fucking want to kill yourself. So don't do that.
There's an element of like escapism for a lot of people in alcohol and drugs, but do you feel like they were also ever really a meaningful part of music making for you?
Yeah, I had fucking amazing moments. I mean, especially with like, pot. There's some great moments with pot. I've had wonderful moments with just playing with people, and then when you can drink like a case of beer, when you're a kid, and drinking a case of beer with a couple of friends in a practice space and playing music is amazing. It's fun. Well, I mean, I've had, it's just it's so cliche. It's all cliche. I mean, it doesn't, but it's at some point, obviously you can't you. Although actually, some people do it their whole lives. I don't know.
Different substances affect people differently. Now that now that weed is legal in Massachusetts, is it? I mean, are you just totally cold turkey off of just drugs generally at this point?
Yeah, I mean that's the true irony. Truly funny thing is like now that it's legal, I don't want it anymore.
I mean, that's fair.
It's just like it's a wonderful thing. I'm like, wow, it's legal, And I mean, I did, I think maybe I'll probably I can't imagine my life where I didn't return to it occasionally, because I think it can be a very wonderful experience, especially with music, listening to music, and then also it has a wonderful way of like turning your thoughts inside out. Sometimes when you really need your thoughts turned inside out.
It's the same with alcohol for a lot of people, where it's just like you can't go to a bar, you can't be around the stuff, you don't want to be around the stuff, you don't want to be tempted. If you feel like smoking weed is going to make you do other stuff, then you should probably not smoke weed.
Yeah. I mean, smoking weed always does make me feel like getting like drinking. So I mean, at the end of the day, because weed. I mean, especially weed is such can be such a mental. It can be such a really amazing mental journey. And then at the end of that, I'm always like, man, why not have some? Why not have some wine? There's perfect balances. I've had moments in my life of wonderful of perfect balance, and actually, I mean, I don't know, being able to live without it or in moderation is great too.
Probably a lot of those times you had that perfect balance, you were 20.
Yeah. I know it really didn't last too long. It was like, because like the daily pot use, I mean, that's just like that's fucking. I know people that still do that, and they have like, I mean, they just absolutely will not give it up, and they don't. I mean, and you can't tell them like, well, maybe it's because you're high. It's like they're like, maybe because you're high all the fucking time. And they're like, no. It's like you can't tell these people anything about pot. Like pot cures cancer. You're like, okay, but nobody ever wrecked a car on pot. And you're like, yeah, they did.
Absolutely, they did. And are you implying that you don't have cancer because you smoke pot every day? Is that the implication there?
It's a pretty good argument that it gives you, that it actually makes you, you can't tell people that do it like on a day-to-day basis. You can't possibly like interrupt them with any sort of like, maybe that's not the best thing for your body or your mind. You can't tell them.
How did you just completely kick this stuff outright?
I think with the quarantine, I mean, I'd gotten down to just doing like I was just taking CBD. Like I was taking these certain CBD pills that actually kind of made me high, to be perfectly honest. They kind of made me high, but it was a different kind of high, but I liked it. But I noticed I was getting extremely paranoid. Like when they would start to come on, I would get paranoid, and there's absolutely nothing worse in the world than being paranoid.
I've had the same exact experience where like I could smoke it in college, but
Yeah,
like in recent years I've had more and I don't know if it's just like the quality of the stuff once it's legal and you can sort of buy it in California and it's more potent, or if it's
yeah.
just like physiological changes that happen over time in your body. But it's just like I like the idea of this, but I'm not really maybe enjoying it the way I used to.
The paranoia just made it untenable. Like you use your words. I don't. I don't use that word very often, but I'm going to use it like 7 times today.
It's a good word, man. I love
Untenable.
it.
It's a wonderful. This is untenable. But it was. It was
The next Sebadoh record is untenable.
untenable. I couldn't, but I mean, especially with. I mean, boy, there's nothing worse than being like having a anxiety or being paranoid around when you have children. You're like, oh fuck this shit. That is totally unacceptable. That's like that. So anyway, that kind of got me off of it, and I have not been able to go. I haven't been able to go back. Not even to just CBD. I just can't. I like can't. I haven't been able to go back. I sort of look forward to the day that I feel like I can. Like maybe if I'm on tour somewhere and I'm in a hotel, maybe I'll do it then. But if I'm just totally isolated, but right now, no fucking way.
I mean, it sounds like you've been pretty productive over the past year in spite of everything.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a pretty. My wife and I started making these like YouTube, these like little like
Instagram, yeah.
yeah, like IGTV and YouTube, like little 20 minute, 30-minute little like variety show kind of things, like little specials where we talk and then I play some tunes. And
I watched the St. Patrick's Day one the other
yeah,
day.
that's been really that's like a way. My wife she's a really she's just got a lot of good ideas, and so we just it's just funny. She's always wanted to. Like even when first got together, she's like, "We should do a podcast," and I'm like, "I don't want to do a fucking podcast." It's like that's too much work, and because then I'd want to edit it and I'd want to do all this stuff, and it'll take forever. And then so we never did that. But then somehow, like when Christmas came around, we were just like, just because we weren't seeing any family, and we just started thinking of just shit we could do, and then we're like, let's make a like a short video. And I love editing video, so it's just like something I love. I've always kind of loved to do, and so I was like, fuck yeah, I'll bring I'll bring out all of my shitty iMovie skills, and we'll cut together we'll cut together like a little Christmas card basically for our family. So we did a Christmas one, and then then I was able to record song. I can record songs, and it was fun to have just cover songs, and so we got caught up in that, and we basically ended up having to do every holiday since Christmas. Yeah.
I was reading a quote I think you had around one of those videos, and it was like something along the lines of the image that people have of you versus, how you tend to think of yourself. And I will say that as somebody who has listened to your music for a long time, when I interviewed you a couple years ago, I was like, oh yeah, no, he's a nice guy. And I think this sort of the implication was that people assume based on your music that you're, I don't know, maybe like a depressive. Is that, do you feel like the idea that people have of you and who you really are at odds with one another?
Yes and no. I mean, I I've always thought my music was pretty playful overall. I mean, like I guess if you were to take all of it into like I just thought, just the way that I play around with like home recording and a lot of my lyrics too are like if they're depressing, I mean, they're always like an internal conversation. It's always like me trying to pretty much take the wind out of my own sails. It's me trying to break my own momentum. Like, when I sang songs about Jay Mascis or whatever, when I was broke up from the band, those songs were about me overcoming those were, I was the ultimate target of those songs. I've always tried to find things that I've always made songs that were meant to talk me out of being depressed, really, or putting me face to face with what I was thinking about, to make my internal dialogue, to put it out there for myself to look at, and then through that process, be able to distance myself from the parts of it that could make me a depressed person, and that could really, that really did stand and that could stand in my way from being a happy person. I use my music to be happy, like even if it's like depressing or whatever. It was all of a way for me to overcome problems, as opposed to me like really overly ruminating or justifying. I didn't want to be angry at Jay Mascis. I wanted to overcome that, and I didn't want to like, feel it, when I got heartbroken or I had something happen to me, like I didn't want to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I wanted to overcome that. And that's what the songs were. That's how I use music, but I can totally understand why people would think that I was depressive. I mean, I can listen to my own stuff now, especially the older I get, the more perspective I have. I'm like, oh God, no wonder people think Clever people think all that shit. But all my initial, my home record, everything that I started with, my home recording and everything was like full on just fun and experimentation, and so much of what Sebadoh was like, really fun, as spontaneous and off the cuff as we could be. That's what I remember it as. And we were talking about it. And it's like I remember, like, yeah, that's the day that we drank a bunch of beer in a basement and smoked some weed and recorded onto 4-track, or that's the day. I mean, I have my memories of touring with Sebadoh was and stuff like that is like fun, and but I don't know. It's funny you were just talking about like doing these. My kids, when they found out I was doing these specials, they're like, "You better stop, Dad. People are not gonna like you anymore if they see these." And I'm like,
Wait. So what is your kid's perception of how people perceive you?
I don't know. All I know is my daughter told me point blank, or my son too, like, no one's gonna think that's funny, Dad, and you better stop before you lose fans. You better.
And this is completely unavoidable no matter how cool you are or were in a past life. Like, your kids are not going to think your jokes are funny or cool, right? I mean, that's just generationally how this stuff works.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, like, a lot of my desire to make YouTube videos is the fact that my son forces me to watch all these YouTube people. When I watch these people like just fucking talk, like making fun of a movie for 25 minutes, and it has like 350 million views, and you're like, wow, this shit doesn't matter. I'm like, none of this shit matters. I'm like, this is great. What a wonderfully open fucking, what a wonderful thing. What a wonderful time we live in. Where like, where a family can go on a trip to Walmart and record it, and it's fucking, I mean, people are obsessed with it. That's fucking amazing. Like, I should fucking cut together a fucking do a Valentine's Day special with my wife. Why the fuck not? It's but yeah, my kids, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't they're just funny. I don't know I don't we talk about we listen to music and we talk about it. They seem to enjoy my tastes in music. They seem to enjoy talking about music with me and playing things for me and asking me about it. So that's fun.
I'm always fascinated with this idea of using music to process things, and again, it's something that varies from artist to artist. I would say probably maybe a majority of the musicians I talk to tell me that there is a certain amount of distance required between them and the thing that they're processing. They need a bit of a buffer, but it sounds like it's a little bit more immediate for you in that you deal with something, whether it's like the breakup of a relationship or a band, and you sort of immediately throw yourself into that songwriting.
Yeah. I don't, I don't really give myself a lot of distance. That's for sure. I don't. Maybe that's a problem. I mean, I was always so jealous of like Pavement. Back in the day, it'd be like, damn, you don't have to like whatever. You just gotta just
It's just got to sound good. The words just have to sound good together.
it's all about texture. Like I really, I'm like, wow, shit, it's really just all about texture. And I wish, I in some ways, I wish I had that. I wish I had that kind of distance. Or I also wish that I was more comfortable sounding like other things, because so much of music really is about borrowing, like literally just outright borrowing or stealing textures and techniques of the music that came before you. Because actually, when you do that, it doesn't make you. It doesn't mean you're going to sound exactly like that. It just means you're just processing it through that filter or whatever. And I just really never, yeah, it's funny. Yeah. I've never had the filter. I've never had the filter of being able to process it through other music that I love. I've never done it. I've never had the filter of being able to play it through another style. I've been very, very adamant about following through on my very specific thoughts, and then also playing to what I consider my specific, guitar strumming styles and singing. And yeah, it's funny to look back on it because I'm just like, did I really have to do?
I guess it's a single from the new record came out, and I think it was this one that sort of started as a lyrical fragment from a like a basically 30-40 year old song, and something you went back and actually sort of like went out of your way to record on cassette in order to kind of recapture that old sound. I mean, is that like how much of that is you sort of revisiting your past?
Well, actually, it's like, well, the thing about those old recordings and lo-fi in general is like how much I love the way it sounds. I mean, I fucking love it. I mean, it's like when I put on a cassette, I mean, it's like I love something that sounds like it's a transmission, like it's like that it could have come from another planet. I love it when it just sounds, it's like, I had heard Daniel Johnston quite a few years after I had begun my own sort of home recordings, but my God, like a Daniel Johnston recording is like such an incredible like glimpse into somebody's. I mean, and it's and the lo-fi aspect of it is it really it's integral to it, and even with sort of those great Guided by Voices records, it's like the lo-fi part of it is like it's absolutely a part of it, and I think for me it's like, unfortunately, what happened was, I mean, I was totally into the lo-fi thing. I didn't, I mean, whatever. I mean, I put out 3 records that were heavily, mostly recorded on cassette, and the band got quite popular. But by at that point, I'd already been doing that for so long that like I was like ready to seize on the opportunity to sort of expand the sound or go to studios. But the reality is, had I not done that, had Sebadoh decided to record the Harmacy record on a fucking 4-track cassette, it would be like that record would have sold at this point like many more thousands of copies, because it's such a forgiving, it's such a forgiving, it's a forgiving medium, like 4-track recording. It's like, B1000 by Guided by Voices. If that was recorded in a studio, it wouldn't be the record that it is, and no one would actually care that much about it. It wouldn't even be like, that's not what I mean. It's the feeling of it being a transmission, and especially with these like shorter songs and stuff. It's like it makes it more of a, it's more vibey, for a lack of a better word, and I kind of like, I sacrificed the vibe in order to try to step up to the budgets that I was being given in the 90s. And in a lot of ways I wish I had not done that. And so now it's more of like, now that it just truly doesn't matter, it's like no one's giving me no one's giving me money to make records, and I can do whatever the fuck I want. So it's like, I want to hear that. I want to hear the transmission. I want to, when I get done with something, I want to feel, I want it to have that vibe for me. That's what I want. I want to make sure that when I'm done recording everything that that I'm going to record in my life, that there's that in the end, the transmission, those feelings of transmissions from another world outweigh the awkward studio recordings.
I never heard anybody contextualize it like that, and I think that it's super interesting and spot on, because in the case of Daniel Johnston, it's like some guy in Austin selling tapes at like something like you stumble on, right? Like something like you maybe you see this guy in some small club or something, and then he walks you back to his car and hands you a tape from his trunk. I tend to think of it as somebody who, when I started doing this on the radio, and I was really obsessed with like AM radio.
Yeah, totally. I was so obsessed with AM radio. That was absolute obsession when I was a kid. Like, I had a little map of the United States on my wall, and I would like just go right down the dial and find out where every station was and put a little point, because AM radio is so amazing. Like, you could pick up stations from 2,000 miles away on a clear night. Amazing.
It's a combo of being able to pick something up from far away, and then this sort of like bittersweet realization that you might not ever hear that thing again. And that, I think that gets to something, and maybe this is something you're getting at. That's something that's sort of lost now, right? That's something that's lost in the age of the internet, when everything is just sort of available online all the time, is stumbling on something that in that way and realizing that you just may never see or hear that thing again.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate the feeling of never being able to hear something again. So
But
actually,
it
in a
makes
way,
it special though, right?
it does. But I'll tell you, it's like, what I think is so fucking cool about now is that, like, the amount of things that are opened up to you are just so incredibly vast that, like, I mean, like, fucking last night, somebody posted something on one of these Facebook groups I'm a part of, and it was this instrument called the KOMUZ. I don't know how you pronounce it. The komuz. It's this 3-stringed instrument, and like, and it's this part of I don't know. It's like Zergikistan. It's not. It's like, it's below Kazakhstan and right on the border of China.
Something that
And
may have been in the Soviet Union at some point.
yeah, it was definitely in the Soviet Union at one point, but it's very sort of Middle Asian. It's but they were
Kyrgyzstan? Is it Kyrgyzstan?
it's not Kyrgyzstan. It's one that I never. No, you can't even pronounce. It's like maybe it's Kyrgyzstan. I don't know, but it could be Kyrgyzstan.
Is
But
Borat
anyway,
from there?
but no, it's not that, because it's not, because these people are the people are more, they're more
Asian? Yeah, like
more
Mongolian
Chinese.
almost.
Yes. But anyway, there's this fucking instrument, and like, the whole thing is like based on strumming. That is what it is. It's strumming, and then like, and it's mostly played by like dozens of people at the same time playing the same thing on this 3-stringed instrument. And I'm like, it was like, I spent an hour like just listening to this music and going like, oh my fuck, I had no idea it existed.
It's like drone music.
No, it is, but it's not. It's like, it's actually quite like, it sounds like, I mean, it reminds me, I took it sort of personally because it reminds me of my earliest recordings, because I played them on 3 strings, and it was all about strumming fast and like imitating hardcore punk rock, but on 3 strings with a, totally different tuning. So it sounds like, again, it's coming from some other world. But these people, there was another, One of the performances was 1,000 people playing exactly the same thing on this 3-stringed instrument, and I'm like, my God, like what a wonderful time. I mean, I had no idea that this existed, and I just and the fact that it was all based on strumming, and it was and they used the instrument. They click their hands on the instrument as they're playing it, and like I had never so as much. And again, it just feels like, I mean, just that feels like the transmission. It's like my God, what is that? It's from literally like the middle of Asia, and, and the songs are like they were explaining what the songs were about. Like, well, this song is about one bird speaking to another about how it wants to make a home in this tree, and the other, whatever. I love the fact that on Spotify, there's shit on Spotify that you may never. There's stuff on Spotify that I'm never going to find. It's like I'm never going to find it unless like there's just some. I it's just this stuff amazes me. Like it's all still there's still that sense of mystery is still there. There's still a dig to be done. There's still like and
I was listening to you on Spotify today, and I had never noticed this, but like obviously any artist of any note at all has a this is list on
yeah,
Spotify, like
yeah,
basically a Spotify curated
yep.
playlist. And Lou Barlow has a no, this is Lou Barlow,
Yeah, I made
which
that
appears to have been made by Lou Barlow. And what I want to,
one.
what was that first playlist not getting about Lou Barlow?
Just how weird some of my shit is, I guess. I don't know, like it's not my best stuff. Like the list that I made is like that's actually a pretty short list of what I think my best recordings are. I mean, that's like that I personally think are among the most interesting things that I've done. They're the I mean, it's just one of those things like I make that list going like, God, I just want some fucking 13-year-old to hear that. I don't care if they hear like fucking Rebound or I mean, those are all good stuff. I mean, Sebadoh at their peak, whatever. But I'm like, I want to get somebody to hear something that like what we're talking about. I want somebody to find something and hear, because I feel like my best recordings are things that sound like what we're talking about, like just like an unusually intimate moment captured in an untraditional way, and like captured and that has a texture that like maybe someone wouldn't have expected, and or when you do it when you're anything, everybody knows this by now. It's like it's like what we really look for is something unique. We look for something that like that that someone we look for the things that make something eccentric. Those are really the things like that make things interesting to everybody, and it's actually becoming even more and more like that. The more unusual something is, the better, the more people are attracted to it, which was always my belief. It's like the more unusual something is, the better it is. But of course that was not a popular viewpoint. Everybody wanted to sound like the same thing. It's like and it always happens that way. It's like, My Bloody Valentine came out, and then a million My Bloody Valentine sounded like bands happened. Pavement came out, a million bands that sounded like Pavement came. But in the end, it's like the stuff that really sounds really unique is what people really like. And I think that's actually why there was this, I mean, not to mention Ariel Pink, because I know he's very controversial now, but his records are fucking weird. And that's why people liked it. Even that guy, fucking Mac DeMarco, his stuff is weird, and people liked it because of that. And so I've felt like this incredible. I felt like a lot of like I felt a real resurgence of hope in the like when the aughts hit and people started to really and bands started to sound unique. Like even a band like Grizzly Bear, really unique sound. Like they're doing unique things. They're creating things that and it has that aspect. It has a feeling of a transmission, even if it's a Unknown Mortal Orchestra was another band that happened in the aughts where I was like, this is a really unique sounding band. And that actually, the fact that the more unique the band sounded, the more fucking plays they have on Spotify, and the more that people seem to be attracted to it. So, I guess I would, since I would just sort of take it in my own hands and go like, well, I actually I've done a lot of stuff that only I could do. I don't know. It's unique to me. No one's done. I'll just gonna go out on a limb and say that no one's made anything that sounded exactly like this. That's all. It's like it's a little bit different. And I would like I would like some kid to stumble upon that just the way that like how I stumbled upon the stuff that sounded incredibly unique to me when I was a kid. Like, the first time I heard fucking the Velvet Underground, back when the Velvet Underground were truly still unknown and still something that was like very unusual and was not played in the supermarket, that was these little gems that are just sort of hidden throughout musical history, like of Hazel Atkins, people who've just all these incredibly unique people, unique sounds, and then you compound that with like archival field recordings from fucking other countries with like instruments you've never didn't even know existed. Like all that's it's like that stuff really excites me, and I guess that really is where that's where I want my music to sit someday with somebody.